Say yes to new beginnings.
Yes.
Say yes to new standards of excellence.
Yes.
Say yes to engaging reportage with a difference.
Yes.
Introducing Yes International Magazine. The time to say yes to your dreams and aspirations is here.
Now, you were part of Nigeria's pioneer human interest weekend paper. That's talking about Weekend Concord. What fond memories of your days at the Weekend Concord do you still cherish and still carry, with you?
I have so many fond memories. Is it my first encounter with Chief Mike Awifa, my mentor, and Pastor Dingba Igwe? The two are my mentors. The way they encouraged me or shot me into journalism. I was in the civil service. I was working under a parastatal. In a parastatal under the Federal Ministry of Science and Technologies as a science technologist. The name of the institute is Nigerian Stored Products Research Institute. But at some point, I got fed up with life in the civil service because you wake up in the morning, you get to the office 7:30. You have breakfast, you read newspapers, then you are discussing, then you move from office to office, 3:30, 4 o'clock, close, you leave the office, you go to town, you enjoy yourself in whatever manner possible, and that's the end of the day. And that goes on. And it's not because people were not ready to work, but because research in Nigeria, sadly, is not well funded. If you do a story, an investigative story in the state of research in Nigeria, on the state of research in Nigeria, you discover that they have just barely enough to pay salaries. After salaries, there's nothing left to execute their core mandate. Where I work, I know what obtained while I was there. So I got to a point where I felt, well, man shall not continue to live his life this way. Man needs some action. Man needs some excitement. Fortunately for me, at that point, when I was seriously thinking about retiring, because I had put up over 15 years, which eminently qualified me to retire and get my pension and all that, I then told myself that I needed to have some fun elsewhere, About that time, I saw this advert in the papers, Nigerian Institute of Journalism advertising their postgraduate diploma program. 1989, I put in, and fortunately, I got admitted. Midway into that program, precisely June 1989, you have to have this break to do industrial attachment. And somebody, a worker, a journalist with Concord. She wasn't in Weekend Concord, but I think Sunday Concord. Former Miss Dupe Akwampa, I think now Mrs. Dupe Onobanjo. Then said, Shola, come now. I'll take you to Mr. Mike Awifa. I said, who? Because my Weekend Concord was just blazing the trail week after week and all that. So once she mentioned Mr. Mike Awifa, no. And lo and behold, I found myself before Mr. Meka. You couldn't imagine my excitement that day. And he gave me, believe this as what story did he give me? He didn't ask me to go and write an essay or so, my friend, go to Ikeja, go out there and go to restaurants and look for beautiful ladies, career ladies, across certain demographics and all that, and ask them a simple question. The question was, if you see a man, maybe you are in a restaurant and you see a man that you like, and you are giving all the signs, and the man seems not to notice you, will you make the first move? That was it.
What a story! What a story I get.
Will you make the first move? Sure. Wow. Initially, I thought it was impossible. But the urge of me having my byline, having my name in that paper, and also give it to this man, that urge was the motivation, So I set out. I came out. I gave it what I thought was my best shot. And I was expecting the story. Whenever it was going to be published, to be talked in somewhere, in some corners, lo and behold, Mr. Onifa splashed it. Center spread. 2 pages, photographs, banner headline. He even promoted it on the front page. Azuh, when I got to Lorinda weekend,
You
I
became a
bought,
superstar.
I bought over 20 copies.
Wow.
On Monday, I distributed because I hadn't become a full-time staff of Concord. Then I was still on my job. I distributed to my colleagues. On Sunday, I distributed to people in our church. I wanted people to see my name in
Then
Weekend
I become
Concord.
a superstar.
That was a great story. A great day, a great
Wow.
day in my life.
Wow.
For those two giants, to say, this story merited the center spread. It was wonderful. Like I
Wow.
said, there are so many exciting moments that I had under those two legends, Mr.
Wow.
Michael, Chief Michael Infa and Pastor Dingba Igwe. Sadly, we lost Pastor Dingba Igwe a few years back. May his soul rest in perfect peace.
Amen.
Yes.
Yes. Now, yeah. Yes. You wanted to say something?
No, okay. There was another story.
All right. Please
One of
tell
my
us.
greatest moments. Oh my God, I can't forget this. How can I forget this? In those days, there was a paper called Evening Times. Evening Times. So I bought this paper inside traffic, and I was reading. Then I saw, I think, 2 paragraphs or so. A woman allegedly drowned in a river in Ketu. Drowned with 4 children. I thought that was a big story. When we got to the office, I told Pastor Timothy Yola. Timothy Yola was our photographer. He could get you any shot anywhere without the subject even knowing. Dramatic photographs. I told him, I said, we need to trace this story. When we got to Ketu, it turned out that the woman actually committed suicide with our 5 children. The story in a nutshell was that happy family, because if I went through the family album, happy family, they were going to a church I won't mention here, but Bible believing church, But I understand there was a quarrel the previous night that spilled into the following morning. And then the man left for work. Then the woman now said she was going to punish the husband for whatever sin he may have committed. Then, because it was a solid Christian family, it was so easy for her to convince her 5 children that they were going to heaven. They were going to heaven, and he led them joyfully to Aguyi River. Aguleri River in Ketu, one after the other, pushed, pushed, pushed. Then our firstborn, who was supposed to be the last, sensed and quickly realized what was happening, escaped and ran. That was the only surviving
Member of the family.
child. No, not member, a child.
Of
The
the child.
husband, of course, and the husband was alive. Yeah. So, and after she did that, she now jumped. One thing I've also discovered in my career is being at the right place at the right time. By the time we got to Agbori River, firefighters and divers were in the process of entering that river to fish out the bodies, and we saw the bodies, very gory. We saw they were being brought out, loaded into the boot of a Toyota Ice, and taken to Ikeja General Hospital. We followed them because I had my B2 there, my B2 car. We followed the bus, we saw everything, came back to the house to console the husband, and to have to empathize and sympathize with them. Azuh, what I was looking for, I needed a picture of that woman and the children. Fortunately, I got a family photo from the album. And you know what my mentor or my two mentors did? That was the only story on the front page, on the cover, and the headline was "Mami Water Mom." That was the screaming headline. Then the woman's photograph next, big. I mean, sorry, the family photograph, the woman and her five children, big. Then the lower bar, and that screaming headline, "We are going to heaven." This was a period where We Concord was circulating and selling. I'm sure close to 200,000 or even 300 more. As I tell you, not one copy was returned to us unsold. In fact, I had to struggle. I had to struggle to have the only copy that I have in my library today.
Wow. Wow, interesting.
As big as that story was, I was excited because it was a talking point. People all over the place. Even when I got to London, people were talking about it.
Wow.
Talking about it.
Wow. Interesting. Interesting. Now, you have talked about, one of the most memorable stories you have done. You still tell us about the story that got you the CNN award. But before we do that, I need you to tell me the one memorable interview that you have conducted and why. I know you've interviewed a lot of people, but I just need one that stands out.
I'm not boasting. I've interviewed presidents. I've interviewed President Kufuor in Ghana, President Obasanjo with my boss in TAL, big people, across the country and parts of the continent and outside Africa, But
the most memorable.
If I tell you, I can't even. I don't know whether it's the most memorable, but you'll be shocked. It's an interview I did with a madman in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital.
Just summarize the story.
The story was like this. Anytime I'm a night crawler, or I was a night crawler. So anytime I was driving home through Murtala Mohammed to Ilorin, you want to cross to Unity. You have to cross the railway intersection and all that before you go to Unity, then go to my home in Stadium Road in Ilorin. On Murtala Mohammed way, directly opposite UBA, there was a refuse heap. Are you listening? Refuse heap. And sitting comfortably on top of that refuse heap was a madman, this old madman. raving mad as when I was going home in the night. I would see cars lined up by this man, and they were going into that faith to consult that man who was believed to be a powerful Babalawo.
The same madman.
So I investigated. Yes, they said madman. I got curious. First of all, I didn't know. Initially, I didn't know what was happening there. But I got curious one day, and I parked, and I waited, and before I got told on what was actually happening. It turned out that people were consulting him, and he was giving them things, and they were taking. Some were coming to thank him, to give him money and all that. When we broke that story, my brother, it shook Ilorin.
Wow.
It shook Ilorin. And not only Ilorin, it enjoyed rave reviews, all over the country. I mean, how can so-called sane people, big people, go to a refuse dump, and a madman, a raving madman will give you something? When we broke that story, my brother, that one went. I did another one, a follow-up. I was going to do yet another one. The man disappeared. For a while, we didn't say. They took him off. They took him.
Wow.
Then he reappeared under Jibowu Bridge in
Lagos.
And people were still consulting him. It was when I reported that one. The man who disappeared, pata.
I like that.
That was it. That was it. That was it.
Yes. Now, I need you to tell us about the story that got you the CNN African Journalist Award. Yes, how you were able to do it, and what any journalist who is desirous of winning an award in the course of his or her career must do, just like you did, and at the end of the day you emerged a winner.
What I think anybody seeking recognition or praying to God for appreciation, on that scale of awards, respectable awards and stuff like that, is do not set out to win award.
Okay, you must not set out to win an award.
Yes, just go out there and do your level best. Put the whole of you into the story. That's all. So I think that was what all happened in the case of that story, which my directors and my executive editors Actel captured and captioned as Niger, the graveyard of the living. Niger, the graveyard of the living. And this is the story in a nutshell.
It wasn't you that cast the headline.
No, it wasn't. I cast another.
What
actually wrote that story
that you chose.
Oh, I cannot remember now. I don't know headline I wrote. There were some headlines. My sub headlines were intact, but the one that flagged the paper, the one that flagged the magazine that week was not my headline. Now this is the practice. This is the practice in TEL in those days. We discuss stories and cast our headlines through a collegiate system. The editors, the directors, the editors you sit across the table, you discuss the story. Everybody will suggest an headline. And the board will take the most captivating headline. I was in Sokoto. I wasn't there when the headline was cast, because we flew. No, we didn't fly. I flew to Abuja to collect the photographer. Sunday, who went with me to Niger. Then we flew to Kano. From Kano, we went to Katsina, then enter Niger. through Katina, bad Maradi. We got to Maradi, and we spent 10 days in the country. The story was about the famine that year, children, people, the vulnerable, children, the elderly, women were dying in their thousands. There was a particular time the World Food Program recorded, I think, 200,000 deaths
Wow.
across different locations, in that country. We tried as much as possible to touch as many of those locations as possible, especially the feeding centers established, created by the World Food Program. That was where I got most of the exclusives, that end us that story. God favored us. We were there at the right time. Then two, our first night in Niger, the hotel we lodged. I was just chatting at the lobby with somebody. I was trying to make friends, to get information, make friends and all that. Because I don't speak French. Niger is French speaking. So fortunately, during the course of my interaction, I got a guy, a Nigerian, who was educated in the University of Ibadan. So he spoke Yoruba. I think he later told me that his mother actually was from Ogbomoso. So he understood Yoruba. Yeah, that was how we connected. And the man agreed to be my my guide and my interpreter. And we moved morning till night and all that. The one that touched me most, before that, then, why the story was of interest to us in Tel was that despite the tragedy that was unfolding in that country, that year, the president then, President Mahmoud Tanja, was telling the world that no, it was just ordinary famine, and that it was an annual thing, and that his government was on top of the situation. How can you be on top of a situation and the whole world is donating food for you, and your children are dying on that scale? We are dying and all that. That was the motivation that pushed us to Niger. And we were able to unravel so many things. One of the human interests. That's why I love the human interest angle to every story, because be it in politics, whether you are telling, whether you are doing politics, whether you are doing economy, whether you are whatever story you are handling, there is no story you cannot humanize, because every story is about human beings. Do you understand? So I usually look for the human interest. One that to pin down my reader. There was a particular feeding center we go to in I don't know whether it was in Takwere. I can't remember the correct pronunciation now or something. Big tent. We were feeding before our very eyes. Children were going. They were standing up. They were dying. There was a particular case that I noticed. Two cases. One, a woman just came out of the tent with her child, and she went to the tap. There was a tap outside that tent where you could wash your hands and all that, and laid the child just by her side. Then went to the tap, washed her hand, and left. And just left. So I was wondering what was happening. She abandoned that. There was another one that was even more pathetic. The queue for food and the crowd at each food distribution center was huge. Niger is an arid region. The sun comes out very early and very hot. At 9 a.m., the sun will be blazing as if it was 1 p.m. The sun is blazing. So this fateful morning, we went to this feeding center and we saw the crowd. Then there was this particular woman that caught my interest. On the line, the head of the baby at her back was killed at a direct angle to the sun. to the son, and it struck me, how can a baby be sleeping at her mother's back and her face is feeding the sun, and we have a proverb. We have a proverb in Yoruba land that says, "Àgbà kì í wà lọ́jà kó rí ọmọ tuntun wọ́." You cannot have
Then,
an elder. You cannot have an elder in a marketplace and you see a child at the back of a mother with her head dangling awkwardly. You call the mother away. Adjust the head of your child.
child.
So that's what me and the photographer Sunday Ada did. We called the attention of the mother to the very awkward way the child's head was positioned and which the child was looking directly at the son, that she should adjust. You want just she didn't leave what she was doing. She didn't leave the queue and she didn't touch the child. She just told us, Yaru, Yamuchu, Yaru, Yamuchu. That is
Wow. What does that mean?
The child is dead.
Wow.
No, I just mentioned that component to show you how touching that story was. So when we were coming back, we came came by road. I was running out of fund. I couldn't get to Abuja with the money I had on me, so I just took an hotel. I just took hotel in hotel accommodation in Sokoto. That was where I wrote the story. And, and faxed it to Lagos.
Wow. Now, a quick one. Just briefly, in what way did winning the CNN African Journalist of the Year change or impact your career? Just briefly, before I take the final question.
It impacted it in many ways. It would take me like a whole day or a night to tell you what it did to me. But that singular story, which interestingly was my last for Tell magazine, because shortly after I resigned to join the Sun newspaper. That singular story took me around the world without paying $1. Because because CNN so packaged me, in such a way that wherever the journalism event was that was important, I was there. On some occasions, I was even able to afford to take my wife along, because she was part of it, and and so on and so forth. Most importantly, it also even helped me to get enlisted for the International Visitors Program by the State Department in Washington. They invited me for that program and took me around America's institutions, institutions of democracy and all that, a whole lot that it did.
A whole lot. All right. On a final note, immediately I posted the creative for this interview on Facebook. Someone asked a question. The person says, if I am opportune to interview you, I should ask you this question. That Concord, the Sun, etc., Tell and Co. You ended up becoming the managing director of
the Sun in Ghana.
The Sun, Spectator and Co. That why did the Spectator fail? So let's round off on that note. Why did the Spectator fail? Briefly.
Well, did it fail? Okay, maybe why we stopped. I will not say why it failed. Why we stopped publishing it was that, especially was the primary reason to me was we had a good product, but when we went out there to negotiate business, people will tell us that, for instance, if an advert was breaking, and we went there as Spectator, they will tell us that they have given your parent company now, they have given Sun. So, after giving Sun, why Spectator again? And you and I know that advert and business opportunities like that, feed the progress or otherwise of any publication. So to me, that was a primary reason, because everybody attested to the fact that we had a good product. We had the same opportunity. The machinery, all the infrastructure of the Sun to push the product.
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately, we weren't getting adverts, we weren't
all
getting
right,
patronage. We weren't
all
doing
right.
so badly in the marketplace.
All right. All right. It's on that note that I'd like to bring the session to a close. I want to appreciate you once again for the privilege and the honor to talk to you tonight.